Hi there, I'm Rowena. My family cut me off for being embarrassing, mocked my career, erased me from their lives, and then unknowingly booked a $160 million venue for a gala I secretly own. I watched them toast their legacy, under my name. How did we get here? Why would a family humiliate you, then profit off your silence? What time are you hearing this, and where in the world are you watching from? Drop it below. I'd love to know your story too. The subject line stared back at me like a dare. Venue confirmation. Whitmore Legacy Reunion. I didn't move. The city outside my penthouse shimmered under a fading Manhattan sun, a contrast to the cold resolve curling in my chest. They had no idea. Not yet. 17 years ago, Savannah air was thick with summer and tension. My parents' dining room, all oak panels and heirloom portraits, felt like a courtroom that evening. I'd barely finished saying, "I've decided on hospitality management," before the silverware slammed against china. "You're throwing your future away to serve canapes?" Dad spat, eyes narrowed, jaw clenched, like I'd confessed to a crime. "No daughter of mine will scrub linens and smile for tips." I blinked, trying not to flinch. It's not about tips. It's building. "You're embarrassing us," Mallory chimed, her voice syrupy sweet but her smile carved like a blade. "We worked hard to raise you right. Guess some people are born to fold napkins." I remember how quiet I went. Quieter than the ice water in my glass. Quieter than the silence that stretched after Martin stormed out. Weeks passed. Then the letter came. Fat envelope, red crest. My heart leapt. I tore it open. "Dear Ms. Holloway, we regret to inform you." What? Confused, I drove to the university office. The woman behind the desk looked genuinely apologetic. "We had concerns raised, family feedback regarding your emotional volatility and uncertainty around your future." "What?" I choked. "Who?" She didn't say. She didn't need to. Mallory. The one who smiled too easily when I was down. Who always needed to be the smartest, the brightest, the one who didn't need scholarships because Daddy paid full tuition for her. Later, in her room, I found a printed draft in her trash bin. "I'm worried about Rowena's mental health. She's always been impulsive, emotional. I fear she might drop out midway." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just folded the page, placed it in my bag, and started packing. That night, while they laughed at some late show downstairs, I zipped the last suitcase shut. I left the scholarship papers on the floor, torn, like my trust, and walked out the front door. Martin saw me from the hall. He didn't say a word. I never looked back. Now, in the dim light of my office, I tap the screen. The final payment from the Whitmore Legacy Trust clears. The entire venue, the glass ballroom, the historic garden, the private wine cellar is now prepped. They booked it thinking it was another notch on their prestige belt. They'll walk in soon, all pearls and suits, clutching champagne, never knowing whose name is etched into every inch of the marble. I lean closer to the screen and whisper, "Let's see how embarrassed they'll be when they step into my world." The fountain outside Monroe Lux glittered in the Boston sun, but I barely noticed. My finger hovered over the screen as I scrolled through the Whitmore Gala guest list. Mallory's name sat smugly near the top. Right below it, a note. "Preferred placement, Center Garden." I smirked. They still didn't know who would be waiting at that very spot. On my desk sat a red folder labeled Mallory Whitmore, Special Notes. I didn't need to open it. I knew every word by heart. 7 years ago, I was lacing up black flats and tying my hair back behind a catering van in Atlanta. It was supposed to be a last-minute favor. An old college friend's event staff was short for a massive hotel wedding. I didn't even ask the name of the bride. Until I walked into the ballroom and saw the ice sculpture that read, "Mallory plus Grant." I stopped breathing. She hadn't changed. The same smug confidence. The same perfect posture like she was born into royalty. And when she saw me, tray in hand, apron on, her eyes lit up like she'd just been handed an extra diamond. "Rowena," she gasped, theatrically loud. "Did someone let the help out of the kitchen?" The laughter wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. A ripple of awkward chuckles, some nervous glances, and one or two relatives who smirked because, of course, they remembered me. "Back to your station," a supervisor hissed in my ear. But my assignment had changed. I was now serving champagne at the family table. Martin didn't even acknowledge me. Aunt Judith whispered, "Didn't she used to want to be a lawyer?" Her husband replied, "Some people just can't handle real work." I poured drinks, head down, the bubbles blurring with the sting in my eyes. Each pour felt like surrender. The flash was quick. I saw it from the corner of my eye. Someone's phone raised, the fake shutter sound. I didn't react. I couldn't. But seconds later, my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I shouldn't have looked. Family group chat. Photo of me, hunched, pouring wine. Caption: "Guess you can book the help for your big day." I stared at the screen, then at the names below who'd liked it, even Silas, especially Silas. I didn't say a word. I set down the tray, walked to the back exit, and left. No goodbyes, no payment. That night, I deleted every photo of the wedding from my phone. Not that there were many. Just one blurry shot from before I realized who I was serving. I wiped it clean, like the night hadn't happened. Then I pulled out an old notebook I hadn't touched since college. I flipped to a fresh page. In thick ink, I wrote, "Legacy, my terms." I stared at those words for hours. Then, in the smallest handwriting I could manage beneath it, "One day, they'll eat their words, and it'll be catered by me." The door opened. Present day. "Rowena," my assistant said, holding a clipboard. "Mallory just confirmed her arrival for the gala." I turned toward the window, watched a taxi crawl through the intersection below, then looked back and smiled, sharp and still. "Good," I said. "Make sure the cameras are ready when she walks in." The room was quiet except for the faint tapping of my keyboard. I was finalizing the deck for Monroe Lux's upcoming Investors Summit when my assistant poked her head in. "Just so you know, Mallory's listed as a panelist for Valor Capital now. Thought you'd want to be aware?" I nodded, barely reacting, but something in my stomach shifted. Later that night, I opened the VC's website. Mallory's face grinned beside a tagline, "Empowering Visionaries Through Hospitality Innovation." I clicked the brochure and felt my breath catch. The layout, the header font, the phrasing under Community Incubator Program. It looked eerily familiar. 8 years ago, I stood in the Whitmore boardroom gripping a worn leather binder. My palms were clammy, but my voice was steady. "I'm proposing a boutique hotel incubator," I'd said. "A mentorship-based model for underrepresented founders, especially women of color." Martin had leaned back, unimpressed. "So, you want to run a charity spa?" "No," I corrected. "I want to empower overlooked talent with a profit-sharing structure that feeds local economies, and we don't fund fantasy." He cut me off. Mallory's mother, Elise, had chuckled. "No one will invest in a Holloway who brings guests towels." Then she reached forward, slid the printed pitch toward her, and smiled. "Nice deck, though. I'll keep it, just in case." I left that day telling myself they just didn't understand, that I could still try elsewhere. A year later, I watched a televised announcement for the Whitmore Elevate program. Their tagline? "Luxury with Purpose." The branding looked oddly familiar. Too familiar. My suspicion became reality when a former intern from the pitch messaged me late one night. "Thought you should know. Attached is the internal memo circulating after that board meeting. Elise was praised for her innovative vision." "I thought it was yours." I opened the PDF. There it was. My exact language, formatting, color palette. Even the placeholder name I'd jotted in the margin. The Haven Project. They hadn't just rejected me. They'd mined me. I stared at the screen, blinking back the sting. The air around me felt heavier somehow, thick with disbelief. What do you do when the people who raised you decide your worth ends at the edge of your silence? I almost quit. I almost packed it all up and accepted that I'd never be more than a cautionary tale whispered over family brunch. Then a letter arrived, handwritten in Silas's clean cursive. They'll regret this. Build it anyway. I burned the original deck. I renamed the concept. Rebuilt it from the ground up. No Whitmore fingerprints. No room for theft. I stopped believing in shared vision and started protecting my own. Now, back in the present, I opened my laptop. Mallory's brochure sat beside mine. Their design looked tired, bloated with buzzwords. Mine breathed. My hand moved slowly, deliberately overlaying our portfolios on the screen. I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Let's see how they spin this when the numbers go public. I wish things were different. The message blinked on my screen, signed simply, Silas. I stared at it for a long time before locking my phone and sliding it away. If anyone had ever tried to stay neutral, it was him. But neutrality has a cost. And sometimes, silence chooses sides louder than words ever could. 3 years ago, I was invited, summoned, to a Whitmore gathering in Connecticut. It was held at the old estate, the one where oil portraits still glared down from paneled walls. I wasn't there, of course, but I heard about it from someone who was. In Martin's study, Silas had dared to speak my name with pride. Rowena's latest project in Charleston has broken even in year 1. She's building something real. Martin looked up from his scotch with the slow coldness of a snake uncoiling. You stand by her, and you stand outside this family's legacy. Elise didn't blink, and your name will vanish from the will, just like hers. No shouting, just facts laid flat like cards on a rigged table. Silas hesitated, long enough for the silence to bruise. I imagine he looked down. Maybe he nodded. Maybe he didn't say anything at all. But the outcome was clear. Days later, I noticed his name had quietly disappeared from the secured list of angel investors I'd shared the month before. No warning, just gone. Then came the voicemail. His voice was tight, brittle. I'm sorry. I need time. I just can't lose everything. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I deleted his number, then the voicemail. I sat there in silence for what felt like a week before whispering to the dark room. He didn't lose everything. I did. Time passed, and I learned to bury pain inside productivity. By then, the hotels had their own heartbeat. I didn't need a family tree to grow roots. Now in the present, I was being considered for a civic leadership award. Someone, somewhere, thought I was worthy of recognition. And then it began. First, a vague email from the nomination committee. A concern has been raised. Then a voicemail, a man's voice. This is about due diligence. We're told she was hospitalized, unstable for a time. Is that true? My stomach turned. I contacted my attorney. The trail led straight to Martin's legal assistant. The man didn't even bother masking the metadata. Direct internal memo, time-stamped, flagged, confidential subject, Rowena Holloway mental health red flag. My attorney urged restraint. We can address it through proper channels. I shook my head. They want quiet. I'll give them spotlight. That evening, I posted a photo on my public profile, just the nomination letter, elegantly framed. The caption read, "If they rewrite history, I'll publish the footnotes." The likes rolled in, and then, among them, Mallory's name. A smirking emoji. I smiled. Game on. The notification blinked on my phone while I stirred my coffee. Forbes releases 30th Annual Legacy Family Index. I opened the article without thinking. Habit, maybe. A quiet reflex to see if the world still acknowledged I existed. My eyes scanned the familiar names. Martin Holloway, Elise Holloway, Silas Holloway, Mallory Whitmore, centered, bolded, tagged with 3 upward arrows. Rowena Holloway, gone, not omitted, removed. I stared at the screen, unblinking, until the light dimmed and timed out. My reflection caught in the black glass, hollow, forgettable. 3 years ago, I had started something sacred, quietly, purposefully, a scholarship fund in honor of my mother, Marion. It wasn't grand at first, just 3 students that first year, but each one reminded me of who she had been, quiet strength, patient grace, hands that smelled of rosemary and citrus cleaner. I called it the Marion Holloway Grant. It wasn't about prestige, it was my apology for surviving the war she hadn't. My way of making peace with a family I could no longer trust, but still, for reasons I hated, wished to love. When the applications doubled the next year, I didn't make an announcement, I just kept going. Every recipient received a handwritten note from me, signed simply, MH, if she could see you now. I had thought that part of me was untouched, until yesterday. I was reviewing market data when an alert from LinkedIn buzzed in. Mallory had posted a press release from her latest philanthropic passion, the Holloway Future Leaders Grant. Same language, same partner schools, even the mission statement echoed my own. Word for word, her caption, proud to honor my family's values by investing in future hospitality leaders. Let's build a world where service is celebrated. Her smile in the attached photo was the kind that knew no consequence. I went still. Not angry, not sad, numb, the kind of numb that makes silence louder than screams. She had taken my tribute to our mother and draped it in her brand colors, filtered it through PR, and presented it like a gift wrapped in my scars. I didn't issue a press release, didn't make a call. But my next company newsletter opened with a single black banner across the top. Originals don't imitate. There were no names, no accusations, but I saw the ripple. Dorian stopped by my office later that night, leaning against the doorway with his usual calm curiosity. You're not going to let her walk away with that, are you? I closed my laptop. Not on her battlefield. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't get it. Not yet. This isn't about one scholarship. This is about a lifetime of being edited out, cut from the frame, smudged from the photos, carved out of the lineage. I'd let them write their version long enough. Today, I walked past one of the massive digital billboards on Fifth Avenue. Mallory's face stretched across 20 feet of LED, grinning in her pale blue blazer, beneath the slogan, "A future funded by family." I paused, letting the image hover behind me like a ghost. Then I took out my phone and typed, "Time to reposition the narrative." Hit send. The family group chat lit up with exclamations and fire emojis as Mallory dropped her latest bomb. Secured the Holloway Gala venue. You won't believe it. Elite, exclusive, can't even breathe near it without an invitation. Screenshots followed, booking confirmations, guest list teasers, and one glittery image of the ballroom. I recognized it instantly. Marble inlays, gold-etched doors, arched ceilings dusted in imported crystal. My venue. They had no clue. I minimized the chat and opened my scheduling dashboard, toggling through Monroe Lux's holdings until I reached the one tagged internally as MHL-Brooklyn 5. There it was, confirmed for Saturday. Host, Holloway Family Legacy Gala. I let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, more like a release. The irony was too loud to ignore. Mallory, in her blind arrogance, had booked a space under a subsidiary brand she never even thought to trace. I'd purchased it through a shell corporation over a year ago. She had rented my house to crown herself queen. And still, my name never crossed their lips. A few hours later, my inbox pinged with a forwarded message flagged as high priority. It came from Mallory's assistant to the venue team, a list of pre-event protocols. At the bottom, please ensure no one named Rowena Holloway is permitted on site for the duration of the event. She is not welcome. The gall, the ignorance, the staggering stupidity. My manager asked, confused, if we should deny entry. I typed only 2 words, request approved. Then I added, let me be the one to greet them when they arrive. Dorian, leaning on the edge of my desk with his sleeves rolled up, squinted at me. You're really going to let them throw their little party here? I didn't look up. Of course, it's business. Besides, I folded the email and tucked it under my keyboard. I never interrupt a performance mid-act. The preparation began. My staff was briefed, the event team readied. I reviewed everything, signage, lighting, name tags, valet protocol. One clause slid quietly into the final invoice. On-site owner visibility clause. Discretion waived. No aliases, no ambiguity. If anyone asked who owned the space, they'd get the truth. I didn't need fireworks. I needed silence, followed by a collective, paralyzing realization. I made sure the cameras would be rolling, not on the guests, but on their faces when the chandelier spotlight hit my name, carved into the reception desk plaque. The night before the gala, I walked through the ballroom alone. It was quiet, except for the echo of my heels on polished marble. I paused beneath the grand chandelier, looked up into the rain of crystal. This wasn't about vengeance, it was reclamation. This building had seen champagne toasts, betrayals inked over contracts, and now, reversal. I closed my eyes just long enough to feel the moment solidify around me like stone. Let them come. This is my house. The chandeliers flickered to life as the string quartet eased into a silken overture. Gold shimmered on every surface. Glasses clinked. Dresses swept marble. The Holloway Legacy Gala had officially begun. From the control room, I watched the live feed in silence. My voice was calm through the headset. Now. On the ballroom's 40-foot screen, the welcome reel faded to black. Then, in white serif letters, slow and deliberate, Rowena Holloway, founder, owner, host. At first, there was no sound, just a tightening in the air. The music faltered, forks froze, eyes widened. That's Rowena? A voice murmured from somewhere near the main table. Gasps rippled like water. Whispers cracked the surface of polite chatter. A man dropped his champagne flute. Mallory, mid-bite, turned to stone, her face drained of all warmth. I let them sit in it, not for revenge, for clarity. The doors opened, and I entered the room without hurry. No spotlight, no announcement, just the soft sound of my heels and the buzz of confusion folding into tension. Martin's hand trembled against his glass, a ripple in the whiskey. Aunt Celeste pressed her fingers to her mouth. Across the room, Silas's wife leaned toward him and whispered, "You never told me." I nodded to the servers. One met my eyes and nodded back. I took my place, not at a guest table, but at the staff line. I didn't need a crown. I owned the palace. Mallory cornered me by the dessert table, her tone sharp beneath the hum of disbelief. "This is a stunt," she hissed. "You're trying to humiliate me." I didn't flinch. "You paid to be here, like everyone else." Her lip quivered. She glanced around, desperate for someone to laugh, to dismiss me. No one did. The crowd was still, watching, weighing. That's when the envelopes came out, black, sealed with crimson wax, delivered one by white-gloved staff. Elegant, icy. Confusion flickered into concern as guests cracked the seals. Inside, a cream parchment invoice. Legacy Gala, full invoice. Venue, rental, $50,000. Custom catering, $16,400. Legacy restoration fee, $91,400. Line item, family history fee, $25,000. The room shifted, whispers sharpened. A few guests slipped toward the exits. Others held their envelopes like they might catch fire. Martin stood, thunder in his eyes. "You can't be serious." I turned, steady. "Business is business. No discounts for bloodline." Dorian, standing just behind the AV panel, smiled. Then the mic was snatched. Mallory's voice rang out, raw and shrill. "You think this makes you better than us? This little performance?" I walked toward her, slow and certain. When I reached her, I didn't take the mic. I looked her straight in the eyes. "Number, it just proves I survived you." I turned and walked away. The spotlight, confused by movement, followed me halfway across the room before it faded. The ballroom was a memory now. The crystal had stopped ringing. The gossip dissolved into remnants of dessert and cold espresso. From my office above the venue floor, I watched the cleanup unfold. Staff stacking chairs, servers scraping leftovers into bins, the last gasp of a night that rewrote everything. Dorian stood beside me, arms folded. No one saw it coming. I didn't look away from the window. They weren't supposed to. My phone buzzed on the desk. One notification. Mallory Holloway. One new message. I hesitated for a beat, then tapped it open. The letter was scanned, her handwriting, careful and slanted like it always was when she wanted to appear softer than she truly felt. I'm sorry if I hurt you. We only wanted to protect the family's image. Let's not let pride ruin what little we have left. Love, always. M. She always wrote in passive intentions and conditional regrets. I didn't blink. I didn't scoff. I just folded the letter neatly, slipped it back into the original envelope, then slid that into another. The seal clicked shut. The next morning, while sipping black coffee in my sun-drenched kitchen, I watched a courier vanish down the steps with the package in hand. By noon, she'd received it. Inside, her own letter, untouched, along with a single black card, unmarked, except for one handwritten line. You taught me the cost of silence. I've learned it well. I didn't need to watch her reaction. I could picture it. She'd freeze, maybe reread it 5 times, maybe 6, maybe throw it across the room and then pick it up again. But I knew one thing. She wouldn't reply. Later that afternoon, Silas called. His voice was tight, like he'd just stepped out of a room he didn't want to be in. She's devastated. So was I said, pouring more coffee. No one asked then. There was a pause. Then he said, You don't have to keep fighting. I'm not. I turned off the stove. I'm just done handing out explanations. That evening, Dorian came by with a bottle of wine and no questions. He knew better. Any regrets? He asked as we sat on the terrace. None, I said, clinking his glass with mine. I didn't slam the door. She just doesn't get to walk through it anymore. We sipped in silence. Not sadness. Just space. Before bed, I checked the family WhatsApp group for the first time in months. Dozens of unread messages, 1,000 passive words, 100 performative emojis. I tapped the 3 dots. Leave group. A beat later, I saw the gray text appear. Rowena Holloway left the group. Somewhere across the city, I imagined Mallory staring at that tiny sentence. She began to type, then stopped, erased it. I walked barefoot down the hotel's polished hallway, the cool marble grounding me with each step, peaceful, alone, but not lonely. The hum of Manhattan filtered in through the penthouse windows, soft, distant, indifferent. Morning light stretched across the marble floor like a silk ribbon, tracing quiet along the walls. I sat up slowly, still dressed from the night before, heels kicked off somewhere by the window. The city moved on. So had they. And I was still here. I padded barefoot through the suite. The ballroom below lay dormant, chairs tucked in, candles long extinguished. A tray of apology flowers sat beside my door, white roses and cream lilies with a folded card resting against the vase. I picked it up, didn't read it, tossed the whole thing into the trash without a second glance. The image of last night flickered back, faces pale under chandelier light, silence slicing sharper than any scream. They looked at me like I was a ghost, but I'd never been more present in my life. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, all I felt was still. The memory of my father's eyes stopped me mid-step. Last night, when the guests were gone and the whispers had settled into the carpets, he stayed, standing by the main doors, hands clasped like a man in prayer. He didn't speak. Not a single word, but his eyes, sunken, brittle, holding back everything he'd never said, locked with mine. I nodded once, not out of forgiveness, but finality. Then I walked away. Maybe it was enough, maybe not. I didn't need to know anymore. Dorian found me at the rooftop bar just after sunrise, 2 coffees in hand. So, he said, passing me one, is that it? I looked out over the skyline. I think it has to be. He leaned on the railing. Do you feel free now? I turned the question over. Not free. Just done. We clinked cups. The steam swirled between us like a curtain slowly being pulled back. Later I sat alone in the archive room, cold and untouched since the building's renovation. I placed a single envelope on the middle shelf. The letter inside was simple, typed without drama. If you ever wondered why I walked away, it's because no one stayed. I didn't sign it, didn't seal it, just left it there among the relics of a name that used to mean something to me. When I emerged, the venue was nearly silent again. I stepped into the ballroom one last time. The air still held echoes of strings and champagne. Above the doors, bold and polished, Holloway Legacy Hall. Not for them, for me. For the girl who once served iced tea in the corner of this room while her cousins made fun of her shoes. For the woman who built a life without the approval they wielded like currency. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I didn't open it. I walked past the chandelier that once felt unreachable, past the stairwell where Mallory once screamed that I was a disgrace, past the table where my mother's name was never spoken again. I opened the doors. The breeze kissed my skin. Some wounds close quietly, but they never quite forget where they came from. Some scars never fully fade, but they do remind us of how far we've come. I used to think healing looked like reconciliation, like someone finally saying, "I'm sorry." But now I know. Sometimes healing is just walking away and choosing not to bleed where you once broke. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, let this be your reminder. Your worth isn't decided by old names or closed doors. It's carved by every step you take forward, even when no one's watching. So what about you? Have you ever had to choose peace over pride? Would you have returned that letter or replied? If this story touched something in you, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, I'd still love to hear why. I read everything. If you want more stories that challenge, heal, and reveal, don't forget to hit subscribe. Your journey matters. Let's walk it together.